It's Tuesday morning, everyone. Welcome to the Born Primitive Outdoor podcast. The guest I have on today, I actually have only talked to one time, and that was about 3 minutes ago. So this will be an interesting one, but I follow him on social media, on Instagram. He has a lot of really good info, and that's Rob Benson. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I'm assuming I pronounced that correctly?
I go by Rob. The handle's Robbie Benson, but either way works.
Gotcha. So I actually, you just popped up. I don't know. I think we were supposed to do a podcast a year ago or something. You had popped up, and the info you were giving, I was like, oh, thank God, it's a guy who's not full of shit. And then I was kind of watching a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, this is definitely somebody that's probably shadow banned, known as a terrorist because you're giving. I was laughing or whatever. So I kind of tell everybody, like, I guess what you're doing, and then how much of those things I just said has been a problem with the info that you give out.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Looking back at the COVID experience, I created a TikTok account that discussed what was going on with COVID, the government overreach, everything that looked like that. And that account grew pretty quick. That was taken off, permanently disabled, created another one. Same thing. It grew. I was discussing things that were at the time difficult to discuss, I guess, for some, but made a lot of logical sense, which all are now completely vindicated and true. That account was taken down. So I said, I'm just going to focus on preparedness because the world is heading in a direction that, looks like it could be possibly impactful here in the United States. And for me, it was kind of focusing on things that we can do proactively. I am, my passion is the outdoors. It's building stuff, just kind of working with my hands and understanding the natural world. So I'm like, I'm not going to talk about that kind of stuff anymore. I do touch a little bit on the military industrial complex and the problem with big pharma, but it's not to the level that I did previously. So yes, even on the account that I have now, if I post something on Facebook, it has a different reach than even Instagram. Same company, but the algorithms are so different, and some things will get shadow banned. Sometimes it's just kind of, I can go into specifics if you got any questions, but yeah, it's been wild. It's been wild to see what's labeled as misinformation. It's a tough time. It's a tough time, I think, for people to get real information out to individuals that is actually impactful and makes sense and can make a change in people's lives.
Yeah, no, I agree. Wholeheartedly. I have not seen you post one thing where I'm like, I don't know, Robbie. Every time I'm like, this Rob knows what's up. And when I say that, it does seem, and with what I deal with, obviously, and anybody listening knows me, I'm a wilderness backpack hunter. I don't focus on the prepper stuff, even though I'm probably a closet prepper. And when I say that, there are specific things I think everybody should have in their household, specific skill sets, and that's everything from the standard solar panels to antibiotics. You really knock it out of the park with that. So before I forget, tell everybody what your Instagram page is before I pass that up.
It's Robbie Benson, ROBBYBENSON.
No, I appreciate that. And now when we're talking about this, you go to his page. It's very informational. I would not skip a post, but you go through everything from, vehicle, home awareness. So what would you say, would be the number one what do your listeners want to hear, and what do you think is most important, and do those coincide? Because with what I do, they don't. A lot of guys want to hear about, let's say, the newest, greatest gear, where I'm like, maybe you should actually learn on how to not fucking die when you're in the woods. So how much is it like that with what you do?
Fitness and mental clarity, taking the approach of a stoic and understanding that the world is going to fall apart. Entropy is real. Stuff will break down. All of the gear that you've got, all the gear that I've got, my truck, my skid steer, everything fails. And so it's understanding things are going to break down, things are going to fail. That's out of your control. But what is in your control is how you mentally handle it and what you move forward to next. And so for me, I've got an extensive background in blood sugar management and understanding therapies and how they can relate to bettering your mental clarity and also your physical ability. So I don't really talk about that as much, even though that's a large part of my background. But I think people don't want to hear that you can't just buy some stuff and be ready. You've got to be mentally ready. You have to develop the skills. Oh, cool. You got a new firearm. I went to the range once and shot it. I'm lucky here because I can walk out of my front door, my back door, my side door, and I can shoot a firearm anytime I want because of where I live. You know, picking up a bow. Oh, that was easy. That wasn't a big deal. Well, you're not actually going to be good when you're in a situation where you need to use your bow to kill an animal. You know, all of those things, it's really cool, but it's the grind. It's the stuff that you're doing when no one else is watching. It's the constant struggle. And then you add on top of this, guys like you and me that happen to this, we've made a decision. We're going to be in the public eye to some degree. We're going to show people kind of things that we appreciate, like what we like. And then you get the trolls, you get individuals. And luckily, I'm sure it's the same for you. I don't care what other people think. I just don't. It's a gift I've been given since birth that it's not important to me. But it's sad to kind of see, let's just pull out middle-aged men, for example, that don't have a purpose, and they go into comments and they make derogatory comments. I don't get it as much, but obviously we're all on social media and we see it. And you just look at those individuals and realize I'm 44. You're my age, or maybe you're older, and you still haven't realized that leaving a negative comment on someone else's post about something because you think you're smart is your way to get attention. It's sad. It's the same guys that don't bring their shopping cart back at the grocery store. It's the same guys that just struggle in life, and it's kind of sad. So for me, seeing that's kind of, I want to fight against that, but in a way that it's not obvious, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I just talked about this on a podcast because no, I have haters too, and you know, there's a couple or individuals that are a little worse than others. The thing is the way that I explained it, and I think you would agree. If your number one goal is to get online and talk shit about other people, you are already living in your own hell. Like,
Yeah.
You know, you've dug whatever hole you have, whatever hatred you have for someone. You're probably thinking about me when you sleep with your wife because you're that consumed. You know, you're a fan, right? You're following me, whether you want to. Yeah, and so yeah. I just don't focus on it. Now, if there's something with validity to it, I'll address it accordingly because none of us are perfect. Meaning, if I've said something that I go back and think, man, fuck, yeah, that was bad. Like, probably shouldn't have said that. You know, I'll talk about that or hit it up on a podcast. But the thing is, with what you're doing, and it's the same way I look with me and anyone else. If you are out there to make people better, right? Like, and if it's constructive criticism, that's totally different. But if you're just getting on there to talk shit, again, you already live in your own hell. Because your life isn't good enough to focus on good things. You got to focus on bad things. So you're already fucked. And that's the way I look at it.
It's true. And it's probably a super small percentage, but they're just loud. And again, I don't get it a ton, maybe more on Facebook, just because it's a certain demographic, I think, that's on Facebook. And I don't get it much, but every time I do get it, I'm like, oh, you're the person I want to sit down with. Like, I want to be, hey man, nobody hates you. Like, nobody's even thinking about you. The fact that you think people are thinking about you, let's just get that off the table right away. And let's focus on, hey, man, let's learn how to tie a bowline hit, some type of a knot or something that can, get you into a place where you're learning outside of your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so you brought up the bowline. I have, and I teach courses, and I was actually going to see if you wanted to be involved in some of those offline or whatever. But like, for whether this is in the wilderness or as a civilian, and when I say civilian, at your house, for me, there's 4 primary knots I think everyone should know, and the other ones are just kind of extras that are good to know. If you're a knot guy, what are your 4 primary knots that you use, or 5 or 3, or what are the ones that you think are important?
Oh, good question.
This was This was a squirrel question. This is a squirrel question, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. One thing that I wanted to ask as we kind of go forward, before I answer that, what is, looking back at talking about these individuals, and I don't know your particular account specifically. I've seen some of the extreme stuff that you've done, which is like you're getting up into the higher elevations, which is difficult. And I wanted to ask you, in relation to these types of comments that we get, have you posted content on different style caliber, different calibers, different types of firearms, different things? And what do you see when people come out of the woodwork with that? Because that's a big one for me. It's just crazy that everybody's got such a deep opinion on stuff.
So I don't mess with I'm more of a bow hunter, right? And my, I have a crew of former like tier 1 guys, and civilians that are very, world renowned with what they do. I usually pass it off to them, because when somebody gives me crap about whatever caliber I'm using, I'm literally like, dude, I've killed hundreds of animals. I'm not going to fucking argue with you, right? It worked, right? Like, it's the same with arrows though. So I would say your question, if that was directed me towards arrows, it's horrible. Like, people come out of the woodwork for that. So the big debate for a while, I saw on different forums and survival pages, I get screenshots because I don't get on forums anymore. But okay, if as the world is ending, what caliber would you choose? And it would be hard pressed for me to not tell someone you have to have a 22 long rifle, like some type of a 22. Now, again, you can kill big game animals with a 22. You can carry lots of rounds. You can make them virtually silent, even with homemade suppressors. But if you have a suppressor, it's even better. And it is something that you can kill small game with, not damage it very much. You can kill big game with it if you have the right round and put it in the right place. And that argument was something that I went off the rails a few times that I saw. And I was just like, wow, I don't know that could be argued. And you may have a totally different opinion, but everyone should have a 22 in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, and the reason I ask that is because that seems to be the most controversial that when I post, and it'll just be here, I'm explaining this is a 9mm, so you can visually see, because my audience is not 100%. It's probably 30% that has a solid understanding of firearm usage, and the rest are getting interested or thinking, okay, this is really important. I'm going to have all of these assets in my home. I probably should have something to protect it. So I don't go deep. I'm not a firearms instructor, but I'll explain the different calibers. And that's where I get the most debate and just vitriol from people. It won't even be an opinion. Like, you just made your opinion on a 22, which I happen to agree with. But you look at that, and that's where you see, oh, there's such a problem in people's brains. And that's what I think we were talking about. And that happens to be the content that pulls those individuals out of the woodwork more than any other. And I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's the same thing with arrow weight broadheads and whatever else. But same,
it's so funny.
Thing. It is wild. And I think though, kind of like the knot tying question, like with the caliber, is like, home defense, what weapon, and there's this can go down a huge wormhole, but I'm like, for home defense, shotgun's probably not a horrible idea. Everybody should probably have a shotgun, and, learning to use the shotgun and remembering to grab the shotgun if you actually need it, not just flying out the door. And, there's a lot to that. And, I've had a lot of people like yourself on the podcast that I've talked about before, or talked these subjects before. And, I just don't think some of them can be argued as much as people like to dive in. So, but no, I agree with you 100%. It's pretty crazy how it's almost like religion, politics, calibers, like they're all
It's true. And we can talk about this a little bit later. Then I'm going to answer your not question, but I was in a high demand religion my entire life up until about the age of 40. Again, I said I was 44. So it's been about 3.5 years that I've left that. And one of the biggest things, and I'm not religious now, but one of the biggest things, having lived that my entire life, having had really important responsibilities, is leaving that and realizing that the world is much more full of gray area than it is black and white. There's very few things that are black and white. You hurt someone, well, that's black and white. That's pretty obvious. But you go further than that, you take somebody's stuff, again, black and white. But everything else, there's such a breadth of gray area. And I think the more we try to signal and this is happening in society so much, we try to signal that this is the way, or we saw this during COVID. You had people that were really good, nice, kind of humble people that decided they were going to become the Gestapo and tell people to wear a mask. And it's so hard to understand, how do people get to that? But it's living in that black and white world. And again, we can talk about that a little bit, but it's really interesting to kind of see, as we're talking about the social media aspect, everyone now feels like they have a voice, and that's great. And at that same time, we have to kind of tone back and realize, like, for me, I don't have all of the answers. That would be insane if I had all the answers. So I could be wrong a lot of the time, but you know what? The difference is I can have the ability to go, oh, I was wrong. It's better this way. And I think that's what's missing in society, to an extreme degree, more so probably than at any point in the history of the world, because we have access to so much information.
Yeah, no, I mean, you definitely on the access. That's another thing we talk about a lot is rewind. And I'm a little bit older than you, but same age basically. When we were kids, you didn't have the access to get info or give it like you do now. And the world has definitely changed vastly. And like since social media started, it's a whole different world for sure.
Yeah, we are the experiment. So on to your question, probably I would go, well, bowling, obviously at the top of the list for me, but trucker's hitch, when I'm doing high tension stuff, it's great for securing loads if you know what you're doing. The clove hitch, I like that for temporary use. When I've got something that I'm going to do with a tarp, or utilization of something that in relation to when I'm camping. I think those two really do well in addition to the bowline. But I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on, like, what do you go to?
Yeah, truckers. Yeah, I mean, it's about the same thing. So, but bowline is one I feel you should be able to tie with your eyes closed. Is a big one. The trucker's hitch is one. A prusik or taut line hitch is another one that should be used. A figure eight retrace or some form of that. It's easy. And then just basic surgeon's knots, and then really how to apply those knots. The clove hitch is another big one. And, when I say that, like, let's say it's recovery, like you're pulling something out or just pulling a stump out of your front yard. The bowline is a knot that no matter under how much tension within reason, you can untie. So having knots that you can tie and untie without wasting cordage or rope or having to cut it is a big one. The thing with, like you said, high tension, when you have like a trucker's hitch, just tying shit down, whether that be on a horse or the back of a truck, the trucker's hitch is a handy one to have. And then again, when to apply those and where, is a big one. And I would say there's really no difference between tying knots around the house and tying knots in the wilderness. They're the same application or same knot under different applications, but learning to tie knots is to me like a forgotten skill or an overlooked skill, because when the rubber meets the road and you're always going to be able to find some kind of cordage. You may not always have a choker strap or a ratchet strap. It's something that I think is overlooked that people need to focus on. And I mean, again, talking about technology, just get on YouTube. You can learn them all. Like every knot is on YouTube a million times over, and then figure out, if you're writing your own book, which knots you like.
And with that, having a little, I like a 4-foot piece of synthetic rope that I carry around or have near me. So when I'm doing nothing at any given moment, I go, okay, do this. And then I'll tie a knot. So it's muscle memory and just having something with you all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I agree 100%. Oh, did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, there we go. So we talked like knots or whatever. So with, diving into like bigger picture, stuff, because you cover all kinds of things on your page. When you are talking about, like, let's say if you tiered it 1 through 5, like for home preparedness, meaning whether that be zombies come or the power's out or whatever, what would you say the first 5 things people should, have ready or have an abundance of or to weather out the storm?
Well, good question. I think before that, I want to just chat really quick about you said zombies, and that's always the funny thing that people go to. It's like, okay, we're gonna, because I really liked when The Walking Dead came out. I thought it got really kind of dumb after a while, but it was exciting. It was an exciting show to watch. Like, oh, look at the world. Any apocalypse show for me, and I think this is true for a lot of guys, especially if you're into camping and hunting and just kind of, you've got experience in the natural world. That type of media is just fun. But looking at the real world, this could be a job loss. Being prepared. And this is the thing that gets me a lot of times when I'm having a conversation is they'll lead into like, oh, if there's a nuclear bomb, I'm like, well, first off, if there's a nuclear bomb, we're done. It's not like any preps that you've got is going to come down to your skill level and proximity, and the entire world changes. And I think we're under actual threat of that right now, today, while we're discussing. However, that's not something I ever focus on, because that type of catastrophic problem. So we're talking about job loss. We're talking about power going out. We're talking about the people in North Carolina that having to deal with what's going on, to realize there's not always going to be someone that's there to help you. So developing skills. But if we're going through specific things that you can have on hand, the first one will always be water filtration, or a way to purify water. Water's life. Everything results around your ability to have proper drinking water. Then second behind that is going to be food storage and long non-perishable food items, looking at things in relation to where you store that in your house. It's a cool, dark place. You have limited oxidation or oxygen getting into that food supply, and that you've got no direct sunlight. It's off the floor. You're looking at food storage in Mylar bags and number 10 cans, things that can really last a long time, and a way to utilize that food. So you already know you have the water. If you've got freeze-dried food, you're going to be able to take that water, reconstitute that food. You're probably going to want a way to heat it. So an energy source, which that is obviously firewood, but one of my favorites, firewood's the obvious one. One of my favorite fuel sources by far is propane, because as long as the container that your propane is in good condition, or in condition enough that it's going to function, that propane is going to last longer than you or me. It's just going to be there. It's going to be available. It doesn't rot. It doesn't lose its effectiveness. So that's a big one for me. And then I guess above and beyond that, there's conveniences. Obviously, heat and being able to sustain yourself with shelter is vitally important. That goes back to the wood and the propane, and then tools that you have to actually produce that heat, like a wood stove. And then in addition to that, looking at, I would say, really important to me, but not life-saving, would be solar. Having a backup system for your entire home, super valuable. That's not in the cards for everyone. So a backup small generator that can maybe power enough to get your GMRS radios, which is another one. I think ham is amazing. I don't know much, if anything, about ham. I know enough to have a conversation, but I never do trainings on ham radio just because I'm not equipped with it. But GMRS, I am. I think GMRS is a fantastic option for, I'm sure you use GMRS or FRS when you're in the backcountry.
Yep.
Which one? Are you typically GMRS?
GMRS, yep.
Yeah. So that in the backcountry, if you've got experience with that, that can be a huge benefit for individuals to just understand the basics of GMRS, maybe even just enough to know where the channel is to access the weather reports, or to get, any type of upcoming news information or things that are happening.
And just
even
so
as simple as that.
People probably are listening like, what the hell are you talking about? It's a radio, right? It's a radio, basically. So so people
handheld
understand
radio.
that. Yep, exactly. And so, I don't always use those radios, but at times, some places there, when it comes to putting down an animal, radios are illegal. The thing is just comms,
Sure,
right? Communication.
Yep.
That's kind of the root of it. And the funny thing with this is, and I'm glad you didn't list weapons, because while weapons are important, 100%, the chances of you needing a weapon for what you're again, these are my own opinions. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a weapon. You 100% should. But the primaries, the weapon portion of it, if you're down to defending yourself with a weapon, shit has gone really south. And if you can't keep yourself alive to use that weapon, it's kind of a moot point. While the weapon may keep you alive, water is life. I think you actually said that. Water is a big one. Food's a big one. The weapon portion, while important, isn't a primary initially to me. It's more of a secondary, because if you're to a point where you have to have a weapon, shit has really gone south and you need to keep yourself hydrated and fed to be able to use that weapon. So like I don't ever list those as a primary, although they definitely should be. You should have one. You should know how to use it. You should be very familiar with all of it. But really, you need to drink water. Like that one's the big one. That's the huge one.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, weapons are vitally important. In the situation, you've met enough people, you've been around long enough, and the experience that you have in what you do on a day-to-day with the adventures in the backcountry, this is what I call it. It could be hunting, it could be whatever. You've developed skills. You understand how to take down an animal. You understand these things. You're mentally, you're physically, you just have this ability to understand what it takes. I don't think a lot of people, I think very, very few people would be able to carry out the use of a firearm in a particular situation. So that is something I think mentally that you would have to be prepared for, in addition to understanding how to utilize that firearm, how to repair that firearm. There's so many levels that go along with it. But I will say, to me, it's absolutely vital and essential. And in fact, it's your right. You should have a firearm. You should have multiple firearms. You should have a lot of ammunition, but understand the psychological aspect that goes along with that, which we could talk an entire podcast about just that, but that should go without saying. There's so much more than just having it in a neat little spot next to your bed, or where you put it in your truck or whatever. There's so much more that goes along with it.
No,
a lot to unpack with that.
I agree. And we probably won't, the podcast will be 7 hours if we hit too many of these in depth, but like with the weapon, we talked about it earlier. I think, a person should have a 22, definitely with a shit ton of rounds for that, the cleaning kit and the knowing how to use it. A shotgun, is definitely another one you should have. Some type of a long range or a longer range rifle, whether that be a 6.5 PRC or whatever. And then a pistol is another one. Now, to me, like an AR, isn't an extreme long range rifle. ARs are a big one. They're not bad to have. But if you're talking about, like primaries, I would personally not put an AR in the top 4. It would be, again, the 22, the shotgun, a pistol, and some type of a 30-06, 7mm, some type of a rifle. Again, me personally, but ARs get a lot of love and they're very important. It's just not for me when it comes to survival. I would pick a 22 over a 5.56 and an AR personally.
Sure, and that is if the 5.56 and you've got that AR, that means it's really going down. But yeah. I 100% agree. And one thing that we didn't touch on is the fact a 22 in your hand. And I don't think either of us are like, hey, we're trying to promote, go out and buy a 22 over everything else. That's not what I don't think either of us are saying. Cause I would prefer a 9mm for a lot of reasons, but if you're getting started and don't have really any understanding, you're trying to figure out what to do, less recoil, almost no recoil in a 22. It's less expensive. You can shoot a ton of rounds because it's less expensive. That's the way to get comfortable and proficient is a 22. So I'm glad you talked about that, because to me, anyone that knows what they're talking about, if you talk to a beginner, they're going to say, guess what, buddy? Start with a 22. It's not expensive. You're going to get into it. You're going to get a good feel. It's fun, and you'll appreciate what you've got. And then you can get like 7 or 8 more firearms, and it's going to cost you the cost of one, nice AR.
Yeah. Yeah. And the 22, what you said, I can't stress that enough. So like, Amy, I got her a 6.5 PRC. It doesn't really kick, but it kicks a little, but it's really loud. And so I got her a 22 to just lay down rounds, just trigger time. And so like, she's so used to shooting one precise round. with the 6.5, and it's definitely a longer range rifle. We got in the canyon, I've got a rifle range, and I'm like, okay, that wall, pick a spot and just start laying down rounds at each spot. Target acquisition, just boom, boom, boom. Well, she was so used to, because I kind of went about it wrong, that 6.5 where like we're on a sandbag or whatever. I'm like, no, dump rounds. Like just pick spots and let that trigger fly. And it was a Ruger 1022, which is kind of the tried and true to me. That's the kind of the one to have.
One,
yeah. It just took her a while to be able to just lay down rounds. And again, what you said is 100% true. One of the reasons why I'm, as good a hunter as I am is I started off with a Red Ryder BB gun. I went to then after that a better BB gun, and then I went to a Ruger 1022 and worked my way up. And it just teaches you kind of the art of firing a weapon, I guess you could say. And a 22 is the way you really want to start.
That's awesome. And to kind of finalize, I guess, this portion of our discussion on firearms, I think having an AR is vitally important and amazing. Same as having a 12 gauge shotgun. But again, you're looking like people like us. It's not just about preparedness. It's so interesting. They're tools. I've got a huge assortment of 20 volt power tools. I use them for lots and lots of things. I love them. I love the tools that I've got. I love what I can build with them. I feel the exact same way about firearms. To me, they're just a tool. I don't get weird about them, but at the same time, I'm so glad that I've got them because they can be useful for so many different circumstances.
Now, and I'm glad you brought that up because, as we say this, I have 4 ARs fully kitted up, right? I love ARs. It's just when I'm talking to people about weapons, I'm like, definitely get a 9. Some people kind of poo-poo on a 9. They say you need a 10 or, a 44 or whatever, but a 9 for a people stopper is not as much recoil, and ammo is easy to get. The shotgun, like I said, one of the reasons, like where I'm looking at this is food procurement, right? If you're going to go hunting or whatever, and so that's why the AR is not in the 4, it's the 5. Having said that, if somebody wanted to get one weapon, an AR actually is probably the weapon you should get. And people are like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'm like, well, it's kind of the happy medium. It's a 5.56. You got a lot of rounds you can lay down. It kind of serves the purpose of all of those at one time. You can get a fairly compact model. So I definitely don't want to be taken out of context, but if you're going to get 4, an AR wouldn't be one for me. But if you're going to get 1, it would be an AR. So that's kind of, I guess, somewhat contradictory, but hopefully people understand what I'm saying with that.
No, and I think this goes back to when I asked you, have you experienced the same thing when you talk about just, caliber size? And there's no one answer other than what are you comfortable with? What are you going to use? What are you going to learn with? And if that is a little pump action that you pick up at Walmart to start, awesome, go do it. You're going to get more comfortable, and you're going to get that muscle memory, that feel. It's going to be associated with just how you react. And then you can move up. And then it starts to become this interesting journey almost to understand, this is something to be respected. It's the same as we feel as hunters. This is such an important aspect of life, of sustaining life. And when people don't understand it, you just go, okay, good. You don't understand it. I do. And it's everything. Thank you.
It's actually so interesting story. You'll get a kick out of this. I have a friend from Germany, and she was looking at coming down to visit, and I was talking to her, about like I'm in Wyoming, and how America is different than Europe, and from my understanding, and I was talking about, I said, well, I'll get you a pistol or something. There's a lot of grizzlies down here, whatever, and that turned into one of the strangest, longest debates I've ever had with a woman, because in Europe they teach you, it sounded like from her, if someone goes to rob your house, you just let them. And I'm like, that's definitely not me and my friends. No, you defend your house, right? And she went around and around of like, well, if I have to be in a place that I need a weapon, then it's too dangerous and I shouldn't be there. And I'm like, that's pretty damn funny coming from a woman that guides and is a packer that carries around a rifle to shoot grizzly bears. Why don't you just let the grizzly take what it wants? well, it could attack me. And I'm like, yeah, so can a fucking robber. Just because you let them doesn't mean they won't still kill you. And it was a vast difference of opinion.
Wait a second, and you're talking to a German?
Mm-hmm. European German, yeah.
And they don't have to look back that far.
So, yeah, I'll get to that point, because it got to that point. I said, do you know how much different your country would be if we wouldn't have got involved in that massive war that you obviously are forgetting, right? Like that obviously D-Day, like, the whole nine. And I'm explaining to her, and then I'm explaining to her, like, the pride that Americans have in, I mean, obviously the Constitution, I mean, the whole nine, but the Second Amendment, right? I'm like, you're right. You should be able to carry a weapon. And she's like, well, no, not everybody should carry one. I'm like, I don't disagree. Not everybody should have a driver's license. Not everyone gets a weapon. If you're fucking crazy, you probably aren't going to get one, right? You do have to pass a background check. But to me, I'm like, if you're carrying a weapon to defend yourself from a grizzly, and that's okay, but you shouldn't carry a weapon to defend yourself from a home intruder or whatever. And I was like, it's not like everyone's strapped up like we're, going to kick down doors. You just have a pistol in your car. You have one in your, your fanny pack or whatever. And it's like a condom, right? You may never need it, but it is handy to have one in case you do. Like it. And so it was an interesting conversation, and it definitely enlightened me on what is fed to other countries. Certainly, like, it's, very like liberal agenda jammed down their throat. And then also, I guess if that is ingrained in your brain to just give up what you have because they're less likely to be, she said, well, and something to the effect of if someone has a weapon and someone else has a weapon, there's a higher probability of something. And I'm like, yeah, I would say if I have a weapon and a bad person has a weapon, there's definitely a higher chance I'm going to fucking shoot him. Yes, that is a fact. Like, but good people aren't using the weapons for bad things. And again, it was just one of the strangest conversations I'd probably ever had.
Yeah, that's the one thing Hitler did really well. He took away all of the ability to fight back. So congratulations. Yeah. And every time you have a dictatorial leader take away your rights, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. So, like, moving on to maybe a brighter note, it looks like you're kind of tricked out on vehicles. I'd say overland or whatever, but recovery. You've got a fairly pimped out vehicle from what I looking at your your social media page. Like the vehicle thing has a cult like following when you're looking at preparedness and vehicles. I'm probably happy medium, right? Like, I'm not the guy that has nothing in my vehicle, and I have flares, I have a recovery kit, I certainly have tourniquets and first aid, medical. I have ways to get out if I'm stuck, all that kind of stuff. But you definitely are much better at speaking about this. Talk about like the overlander vehicle preparedness type stuff.
Well, so for example, I mean, I am in Colorado. My property was hit by a wildfire in 2020. The Cameron Peak. High Park was 2012. Cameron Peak fire in 2020. The fire came up to our property and burned around our house. And during that time, my family was evacuated. We had to leave. I stayed behind. At that time, I was a volunteer firefighter. And you realize really quickly that you don't, when you have an experience like this, same thing that's happening in places that have recently flooded, you don't really have a lot of time. So having an equipped vehicle, meaning you've got things in that vehicle that can sustain you for at least a day or two, or get you out of a situation where you're going to be stuck, is so vital. I think so many people that aren't in the worlds that we're in, with hunting, overlanding, getting out into the backcountry, they don't really fully understand that they may at one point need to leave. And it might just be for a couple of days. It might be that they're on a vacation, but the more I can have in my Duramax set up, ready to go. And I've gone through, I'm a Toyota guy. I love Toyota. We've got a bunch of different overlanding style rigs. My kids have, one's got a 4Runner, one's got an LX, which is the Land Cruiser. My wife's got a GX, which is the Prado for Toyota. And they're all great suspension. We've got lifts. It's just fun. We're in our location. We're kind of on a dirt track to get back to our house. So it's convenient that way, but at the same time, they're capable and they can get out. But all of those things, I had a Toyota for a while. I ended up going to the Duramax so I can pull my skid steer. I can move cattle. I can do a lot of different things. But having something that I feel like I can get a lot done with, to me, it's just fun. But at the same time, when it does come in handy, I feel really good. Like if somebody's stuck and I got to pull somebody out, if whatever the situation is, I feel like I'm ready. And there's just a sense of pride and happiness that comes along with feeling that way, even just when it comes to your vehicle.
So I'm scrolling through your page now, and it's going to sound like I'm copying you because a lot of this, we have a lot of the same shit. So this is comical because I'm like, all right, this is going to sound plagiarized like a mother. So for me, I'm going to list off some of the things I keep in my vehicle, and then I want you to do the same thing with yours. And again, I'm probably more mid-road. So like I have a lever action 44 it's a Maven basically variable scope up top. I have a 9mm and a 10mm. So I'm pretty kitted up inside that. A lot of times I'll throw another weapon in. So I have multiple road flares in the back. I have 2 choker straps, block and tackle. I have a couple recovery ropes, change of clothing. I have a 28-watt solar power panel. It's just called the Big Blue. It's pretty standard. It's more of a backpacking panel, but it works. I have a multi-fuel stove. It's a Whisper Light International. Inside of that, with the little kit that goes with it, I've got a cook set. I've got 3 different filtration systems in there, or purifications. I've got Pills, MSR Aqua Tabs. I have a Sterapin Classic, and I have a gravity filter inside there. I've got a big ass wool blanket. I've got a tarp, and it's like a waxed cotton tarp, I guess, or whatever. That's inside. I've got multiple different types of rope, choker straps, things of that nature. I've got Luco tape. I've got duct tape. I've got a shitload of zip ties. Yeah, that's all in duffel bags, kind of sorted out. Puffy jackets, stuff like that. I've got food in a duffel bag, and it's a various amount of food. I've got a shitload of coffee in there because I love caffeine. You said it best. If something happens, whether I'm traveling or I have to leave the house, or I'm stuck on the side of the road, or somebody else is stuck on the side of the road. Again, the medical stuff, tourniquets, I have all that in there. And it was fun setting it up. I also have a fuel canister that'll hold a few gallons of fuel. I got a shovel, I got an axe, all of that type of stuff, a silky saw. And it sounds like a lot, but I have a Lightner design system on mine. I also have like a shower that's hooked to it. It cleaned out my garage, a bunch of shit that I needed to put in my truck anyway. And it literally, I just kind of listed A to Z of like, all right, what am I going to need if I got to take off? It was that simple. And so that's kind of my system. I'm probably forgetting some shit in there, but what are you throwing in yours?
Well, first off, you said you're middle of the road. I don't think I think you're more prepared than anybody I've met.
Yeah, I guess maybe I just don't get as geeked out on it. I would say maybe. I mean, that did.
Oh, you're there. Hearing the contents of your car, you're totally geeked out.
I tell you what, it was fun.
You're doing awesome.
It was
fun.
Yeah,
no, it's fun. Well, and it's goofy when you start putting it all on the exterior, which I love extrusion overland. Check them out. That's what I've got on the back of my truck, so I can multi-purpose it. I work with realtruck.com as well, and they sent me the Retrax. I did an install video on that Retrax system that's the tonneau cover. That combination, being able to load a shovel up there, but I'm with you when you. So I'm pretty equipped, but I don't have all my stuff sitting out on the exterior of the truck, which I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, come on! Like you're never going to use 90% of that stuff." But you got to understand the overlanding community. It is their passion. Like for me, I think people that golf are idiots. I think it's the dumbest sport in the world, but I respect it. If people want to do that, I would rather build a trail on my property than go golfing. So everyone's got their own thing. And so when people disrespect the overland community for having too much, which I sometimes jokingly do a little bit, like, dude, you got enough on the back of your truck. At the same time, it's fun. It's the same thing as hunting. Like for me, hunting is a utility thing. I want to bring back that meat. To me, eating ruminant meats is my multivitamin. I'm healthy, I believe, because of the fact that I eat that way. And so everybody's got their own thing, but I digress. You are more than planned and more than ready and prepared. So you're doing awesome. But I can kind of list a couple things that I think are also beneficial. Want me to do that?
Yeah, definitely.
So just going through the list, one of the companies that if you do any UTV stuff or backcountry, 4-wheel drive, anything that you're off on a dirt track or really on tough roads, is Glue Tread. Glue Tread's a great company that allows you to even do sidewall repairs. So having one of their kits on has been awesome. That punctured tire repair kit, which comes with one of those Glue Tread kits, if you don't want to spend that type of money, just go to Harbor Freight and get one. I have used on my skid steer, on my UTV, on my 4-wheelers, on my trucks, everything that I can think of. I've had to repair a flat utilizing one of those. You don't have to call AAA. You don't have to put the spare on most of the time. One of those tire plug kits is a must-have, absolute. I don't care who you are. Just learn how to use that and then get one of those power banks that allows you to push air. So it's slow. It's not great. You can, upgrade if you're doing the overland thing. There's way better systems, but for under $100, a great Christmas gift. Put one in every car that you own. They're awesome. A lot of them will have a flashlight on it, so you can kind of see what you're doing while you're working on it. You can fill the tire. You can even jumpstart your car with some of these. Super important. So I would say that those two to me, or I don't care if you overland or do anything special, if you don't have a tire that's working properly, good luck. You're not getting anywhere. So in addition to that, you've got a folding saw. If I'm going anywhere where I know it could actually be an issue, and this is controversial, I have 2 gas-powered chainsaws. However, I always default to my DeWalt 20 volt, which I've got a 100 amp hour battery. I love my little DeWalt chainsaw. It's electric, and people, when I do videos on, like, oh, you don't have the same. And I'm just like, whatever, dude. I probably cut down more wood than you do. And so I just don't care. This is what I prefer. So don't get bogged down by people's opinions. I prefer an electric chainsaw if I'm doing anything. And I love to throw that in the back of the truck on like a molly panel, so it's ready to go. But stuff to cut so you can get out of the way. Duct tape. You mentioned Leukotape P. I don't think a lot of people understand, unless you're like us and you get into the backcountry a lot. Your feet really kind of can suffer. Mine do, at least.
Dude, I would make love to Leukotape if I could, because it saved my ass that much. Like that.
Well, that's weird, but other than that, I've never used it for that purpose. But my gosh, does Leukotape P change everything? And I've done probably in the last year, maybe 3 or 4 videos talking about all you have to do is pull a bunch off. If you want to just keep it in your pocket, reapply it to itself and throw it in your pocket, and you've got everything that you need. Maybe that and a little nonstick gauze. Just a great option. And I know all of those in the know, they carry a tourniquet, but all of those in the know that carry a tourniquet, I would bet that 99.9 have never used a tourniquet in real life. However, when you need it, it's vital. 100% have to carry it. But the thing that you're going to use on a regular basis more than anything else is some nonstick gauze and Leukotape P. And with that, if you can carry in like an iodine tincture, one of those Lugol's iodine tinctures, that can be really beneficial as well. Maybe you just pack it in something so that glass doesn't shatter. Lugol's iodine, highly recommend on anything. It's not necessarily a car kit thing, because it is mostly, you're going to have probably 96% water in one of those Lugol iodine dropper options. So it will freeze, but something just to kind of have in your med kit at home anyways. And you can consume it. There's tons of health benefits. Your body needs iodine. So anyway, that's kind of off topic. But a shovel to me, anything wool. I just did a video on wool yesterday. Love wool. I go through gloves quite a bit. I don't know why, but when I get leather gloves, I like to get leather gloves with the padding on the inside. The type of work that I'm working at here on our property, I go through gloves quite a bit. So I have an entire 5-gallon bucket full of gloves ready to go. Obviously, I keep some in the truck as well. You mentioned a wool blanket. Absolutely essential. A Mylar thermal blanket's going to be a solid idea, especially if you get caught in a blizzard or something where you need to maintain that warmth. As always, water filtration, hugely important. Paracord, ropes, things along that line. You mentioned a tarp. The type of tarp that you've got is superior, but even if you just can't get that, just go to Harbor Freight and grab a small tarp that slides under your front seat even. It takes up no room at all. I would probably try to stick something a little bit larger than 10 feet, maybe 10 feet and above, so that you can actually utilize it as a roof if you needed to. Where we live, scrapers, you've got things like car fuses. I think that's often misunderstood. Good to have car fuses in the car. And then those little car escape tools up front for individuals that think, I really don't drive by water. You really should have something that you can penetrate the window if you needed to. And I could keep going, but I think that gives us a good idea. Having stuff in your truck, in your car, really, you can't go wrong. You have to be able to cycle through the food that you put in there, just because those extreme temperatures can really be damaging, even to MREs. So if you're like, I've got these MREs for 5 years, they've been in my car, you know what? It's time to retire those MREs and throw some new ones in there. Because when your car gets to 120, 130 degrees in the summer, the degradation of those MREs actually does happen.
Gotcha. All right, I'm going to rewind because you brought up the saw. So I keep a silky saw. I think it's called a big, not a big kahuna. I don't know, whatever it is. It's the big silky saw. And I can cut down some pretty big lumber with that, whether it be I start a fire beside my truck. You know what I mean? We're just camping beside the truck, or there's a log in the way. I have a winch on my truck, that I can yank it out of the way after I cut it, whatever. But you talked about the electric saw. Now, keep in mind, I'm from Oregon, and I'm definitely from a logging community. And back in the day, if you would have said, I'm going to use a, 24 volt, DeWalt Milwaukee saw, you would have been made fun of. Now, recently, right. And I've got a couple still, what are they called? Farm hands. That's kind of, just for firewood at the house, whatever, for the stove. Yeah. I recently started using an electric chainsaw. And for all I ever made fun of, I'm retracting every fucking word I've ever said. Because now, will it do, crazy things? No, but it's...
Well, you're not going to use it for 8 hours either.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though, it's less daunting. I will say that. So for someone that hasn't run what I call a power saw, but a chainsaw, very much, right? They are a bit daunting, right? You crank that thing up and... It's not as daunting. It's not, even if it's mental. So you're a little more comfortable using it. I feel that you can
hum and spin.
Yeah. I feel that you definitely can do, man, I would say 99% of what most people are going to need to do are going to be done with an electric saw. Now, when I say that, people are like, okay, just rewind your life. And then go through how many times. I'm not talking about splitting firewood all day long, to cut 6 cords of wood, although it could do that. What I'm saying is, okay, you're by your truck and you just want to start a fire, right? Check, can do that. There's a downed tree. Unless you're an old growth forest in Oregon, there's a downed tree in the road and it's stopping you from getting to your camp spot or your fishing hole or whatever. No problem, right? A tree falls at the house and crushes your fence. Again, unless it's a giant cottonwood or something, even still, if you're crafty with it, it can do that. So I feel it's far better for the majority of the planet now. Now, again, if you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have been saying, Robbie, you're full of shit. You're not now, because I've used one a bunch. And dude, I can't suggest them enough. They're super easy. They're inexpensive. Yeah. You don't need a lot of knowledge behind it. You're not pulling out the spark plug. You just throw the battery on the charger and then plug it into the saw and you're ready to go. So talk about that more, though, because you went into it, but you've probably used one far more than me, dude. I love that thing.
Oh gosh, it's lighter. If you are in a precarious situation where I've found myself, because on our property we've got pretty extreme cliffs, and I found myself for a lot of the trees that burnt that are kind of in a tough spot. When the winds come through, which I'm experiencing it right now this time of the year, and in the spring, we get these north winds that are just insane. We're talking 40, 50, but then sometimes we're getting close to 100 miles an hour. We're just kind of on the top of the mountain. And when that happens, these trees just fall over and they're on the side of a cliff. Well, that's a dangerous thing if we're going to be down there by the water having fun. So there's been some times where I've had to climb down and hold that's I'm going to tell you the weight difference. Even if I just take out that 100 amp hour battery, which is that's just a tiny little bit of weight, and put a smaller battery, it's even lighter, and I can get into precarious situations and cut. And the only thing that you've got to really kind of use to manage that device is bar chain oil. Everything else is just, it works. It's the same as like a dirt bike that's electric. There's a lot less that can need maintenance on it. But, I get the purists. It's just the fact that I can toss a battery in there. I've talked a lot about this in a lot of content that I create, but being able to use products like Stable to put into your gas or your diesel to allow it, and there's a lot of different better brands probably than that, but just to give you an idea, where you've got to maintain these storage. This situation, I've got a bunch of jerry cans for my diesel. I am going to install, this is one thing that I would highly recommend that it's probably going to get here in the next day or so, and I'm installing it on my Duramax, and that's a 57-gallon tank from Titan Tanks, which I'm super excited about. So I can probably get my truck between 600 and 800 miles to the tank, which is my fingers crossed. I'm hoping with that 57-gallon tank. And then if I ever decide to go against the EPA and delete that thing, which I really want to do, probably even get more. But having that, all of that was a little off track, but having all of those gas tanks with the stabilizers in them, I don't have to worry about that, or even buying those little tiny tanks that you can, or those little cans that you can get at Home Depot, like the 50-to-1 mixes that are ready to go. Those are awesome. It's really quick if you're not using your stuff as much. You don't need any of that. You just need to plug it into a charger. And if you've got a little battery bank that's backed up by solar, you really have this. It's not forever. It's going to, they're only going to last so long, but you've got this right now, this ability to be able to generate power and make cuts to heat your home or to move some type of wood that's in front of you on a trail when you're trying to get out after a windstorm. It's just epic. And that's what I said earlier when we were kind of chatting. I love my 20-volt tool kit. I've got so many various tools when I build something, even if it's like putting up cattle fence, or if we're building a deck or going to build a cabin, whatever the case is, those tools are awesome. And I get it. It's not like back to basics. You're not using, which would be amazing. And maybe one day I'll scrap all those and I'll just go because I have all the time in the world. But right now, I just want to get a project done. They work great. Highly recommend them. The only problem is I went with DeWalt. I think if I was to turn back time, I'd probably go to Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'm a Milwaukee guy. I worked construction for years.
Nice.
And so Milwaukee was that's always just been my bread. And I've got the same thing as you. You get the fat packs, whatever you want to call them. I got a big plastic container, and I've got every cordless tool known to man. But I will say I bought an Ego weed whacker, and I think it's an Ace Hardware brand. And I was skeptical. Like as a kid, I just had corded weed whacker. I can tell you my arms gave out before the battery, like weed whacking around the house. Like that battery lasted a long time. And then I bought a still corded weed blower. And then I got a friend of mine, just as a gift, the cordless weed blower. And I'm definitely wishing I had that. And so I can't say enough about it. I agree with you 100% on all the corded versus cordless tools. Cause like the cordless it's just handy. And I mean, you can buy and this goes with the overland thing. You can buy a pretty badass air compressor and a impact wrench for changing out tires. And like you said, I forgot about the tire repair kit, but they're not very big. It's like a boombox radio size. You plug it into your cigarette lighter and they're very efficient. And you can get the impact gun to go with that.
Or you just get 20-volt impact too. I mean,
yeah, that's what
lots of options.
That's what I'm talking. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and it fits right on every other tool that you have. And it just that impact or that compressor, you just plug the battery right in.
Yeah, man, it's great. And so I've gotten some heat for that when I've talked about chainsaws. I'll show my gas powered. I'll show him this is the one I grabbed and I use every single time. And whatever, it is what it is. I love it. And if you've got, like I said, if you've got any type of solar capabilities, which again, it's one of those things where I go back to, I'll never use Facebook or I'll never, use email. You just go back further. Every generation has I'll never use whatever insert that thing is. And then, 20, 30 years later, everybody's using it. Those same guys ended up purchasing it. It's that. Solar to me is one of those things where for so many years people are like, oh, gee, that's just a hippie way to do it. Whatever. I can put a panel out. I've got this base station in my garage. I've done an install video and I've showed people kind of the build. You put a transfer switch in, you put a large battery bank in, you have your inverter, which I've got a hybrid inverter mounted on the side of my wall that I installed, and that allows me to then switch back and forth which breakers I'd like to use on that battery bank. And then you just tie in solar to that. And if you don't want to go to that extreme level, just go smaller, but you are giving yourself power where no one can interfere. I guess if you believe in this, which I guess that's a whole nother topic, but it is interesting. A lot of people talking now about chemtrails. And I don't know. I have no idea. I've always kind of thought like that's ridiculous, but I think each day that passes, I'm a little bit more skeptical that they're trying to block out the sun. I have no idea though. I really don't know. But other than that, the sun is just there. It's free energy. And if you like it or you don't like it, nobody cares. It's effective. That's all it is. It's just effective.
No, it is. And I haven't done the home solar yet. And that's really more just busy and laziness, but I've used solar panels a shitload, for survival, as much as just charging up my inReach or my phone or whatever that my camera gear. You can.
So you carry one in the backcountry. You carry a little foldable.
I do. So I've done multiple, YouTube videos on this. Like my system is I have a 20 to 30,000 MHZ battery pack, and then I have a 28 watt solar panel. So I don't always bring the panel just because obviously depending upon the duration of the trip, right, I'll just bring the battery pack. But what I do on the longer trips is I put the solar panel out, I plug the cord into the battery pack goes under my vestibule. That charges up throughout the course of the day. I plug all my stuff in at night, rinse and repeat. It's super simple.
Yep.
There are some shitty solar panels out there as well as battery packs.
Oh yeah.
I read the reviews. I mean, if anybody's going to bitch, it's going to be online. Now, some of those reviews, I will say on good panels, are people that just don't know what they're doing. But a good solar panel is worth its weight in gold. And when I say that, you don't always have the ability to plug into a wall. And, whether that be the battery pack or the solar panel, it's just very convenient to have. And when I say that, that's whether you're living off the side of a mountain out of a backpack or with what Rob's talking about. They're just something you should really look into, and they're invaluable. I can't say enough about them.
Yeah, and on that topic, and this is my whole message, my content, everything I talk about is how to prepare for everything. And that's like everything. That's ridiculous. Well, everything kind of boils down to a few simple things. And then when you have the discussion and individuals are like, well, I'm not a prepper. Like you even mentioned, I'm like a closeted prepper. I forget exactly what you said, but you're doing things naturally. And that's because you recognize investments. You just made a comment about that. Everything that we do, if we decide we're going to go to school or pick up a trade or anything that we're going to do, we spend time, we put our effort into it, and we reap some type of a reward. We're doing it for some reason. I know you like to work out. I like to work out. Well, I don't actually like to work out, but I like the results of working out because it makes me more capable. I have to put in the time. I have to put in the effort. Sometimes it costs money, but it definitely always costs time. But when I look at all of this, and we talk about investment, if you're investing in the stock market, if you've got Bitcoin, whatever the case is, anything that you're doing, you're making investments. And the craziest thing to me is we live in a world where people think that making an investment in actual food, actual energy, actual water procurement, or having the ability to filter is silly. Well, screw you, screw all of you. You're on your own. I don't even care anymore. If you're unwilling to recognize that preparedness isn't just about, the things that we've been told it is, like investing in the stock market. No, in investing in you and creating what I call a self-managed insurance plan. That's you ready for everything. And again, when I say everything, obviously you're never prepared for everything, but it's the idea that you're building the skills and you're acquiring the assets and you're enjoying the experience. It's like building out an overland truck. It's like installing solar. It's like having rabbits for meat. It's having chickens for eggs. It's an experience that should be enjoyed. We're so focused on digital, and you forget the real world. You forget, oh, it's actually interesting and useful to learn knots. It's actually interesting and useful to learn how to protect yourself and to go out and get food with a firearm. All of those things are preparedness. It's all you investing in something that's great. And luckily for you and I, we actually like it. It's exciting and fun. And I think most people, when they actually do it, like getting into the backcountry, because I've gone out bow hunting, you don't realize how much stamina and effort you need to actually enjoy it. If you don't have it, good luck, buddy. It's gonna suck the entire time, and you're gonna be the one constantly holding us back. We're trying to get deeper. You get that, I know, probably better than anybody.
No, I agree. And I mean, you described that far better than the investment is a good way to, to put that. And I think the word prepper, and including for me, for years, I made fun of that because I was looking at preppers that, buried a Connex in their front yard. And I think much like religion and other things is I based my thoughts on that off of weirdos. And when I say weirdos, it was somebody that was 80 pounds overweight, that had no depth in firearm safety or proficiency, and they just like to buy a bunch of shit and didn't. And I agree with what Robbie says is you want the total package. You want fitness, you want woodsmanship, you want fieldcraft, you want to be very skilled at everything that you do to prep. And prepping is not just buying a bunch of cool shit. It's also perfecting everything that you do around it. And Rob's describing it far better than me. And fitness is part of that. And not everybody needs to, be at 9% body fat with 6-pack abs. But when that movie Zombieland came out, I laughed my ass off because it was like the fatties are the first to go. And that is a fucking fact, right? That is true.
Yeah.
And when you look at certain things in life, so like crutches, and I have lots of them. One of them is caffeine, right? Like I had to go recently without caffeine for quite a while, and I can do it. But when I'm looking at like what I need to, survive, or what someone needs or whatever, the less that you need as a crutch, the far better off you're going to be. And one of those things people don't think about as far as a crutch is fitness. Do you need, every time you go anywhere, a vehicle to get you there, or can you get there on foot? Can you get there on a bicycle, right? That is a big, big thing, because if you're broke down and stranded and you have to walk somewhere, that is a problem if you can't walk very far, right? And so those are the things that I really try to stress people on, is everything we're talking about on the gear, the knowledge, things like that. But the fitness portion of it is huge. And again, something else that's overlooked, because you do have to work hard to have a level of fitness, and people hit the easy button.
Well, and you hit something. I got a follow-up question on what you just said. It's caffeine. Okay. You said you didn't drink caffeine or consume caffeine for a little while. How long was that?
4 months.
How good was it at 4 months in a day? Like,
to have some?
What was? Yes.
Oh man!
Like, I want to go back to not having caffeine to get that mental clarity and just focus that you get when you have caffeine after a while. You know what I'm saying?
Man, so it was very good. And I think what I learned with all of that is, moderation, right? Because I was a caffeine junkie. And when I say that, I was 600 milligrams a day. I was drinking energy drinks, which I stopped drinking. I say stopped. I'll have one occasionally. And I say that like once a week or something. But I do... It helped sleep, obviously, greatly, right? And I don't sleep much to begin with. But the thing is you drink so much caffeine, and what Rob was mentioning is that it becomes to where you're not getting anything out of it. And so when I first drank caffeine, it was just a cup of coffee. And it was the equivalent of what 600 milligrams of caffeine would have given me 4 months earlier, right? And so that cup of coffee was huge. And so now I've been able to like really tone it down to where it's, definitely I'm at 250 milligrams a day rather than 600 milligrams a day. But no, it was amazing. And the thing is knowing that you can do without it is a big, part of it. You are sluggish I'd say a good week or two before you're snapping out of it. The thing that I was doing was like cold plunges to wake my ass up, like cold showers,
Hey,
like,
my man.
yeah. So, and I'm
Are you a
addicted.
cold plunge guy?
I'm addicted to them. And I'm not the guy
Good.
that's hopping in the cold plunge, watching my wiener shrink every morning, but I do get in it every morning. And I just, I can't, I see people talk crap about them online sometimes about, they're not as good as what people say, and this is what you should do.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I can't
There's
say.
something that happens
Yeah,
in your brain when you do a thing you absolutely, and there's not a person. So I've only taken coldest setting cold showers for over 6 years. I've not taken a single warm shower. Doesn't matter what the circumstance is. When I had pneumonia, I had lost 20 pounds I went from like 185 to 165, like 163 actually, back in 2001, and had pneumonia. It was awful. I still took a cold shower. It was probably not advisable, but it's one of those non-negotiables that I decided back, 6-ish years ago, that I was never going to take a hot shower again. And I don't even care if there's not health benefits. I know my willpower has grown because I'm making that stupid sacrifice that I make every single day, sometimes twice a day. And it's not as difficult as getting all the way in. I appreciate that. I also do the cold plunges. I think they're fantastic. But it's one small thing to build willpower. And so many people live their life without the ability to understand what it takes to actually develop willpower, to go over that next mountain that you can see in the distance, that you're 4 miles out and you're going to have about 3,000 feet of elevation gain. You can do that because you've developed the willpower. You've had the experience. You know exactly what I mean.
I do, and I want to dive into this a lot more. Some of the things we're kind of skipping over, but I was a cold shower guy since birth, right? I've always been a cold shower guy. Somebody told me when I was really young, it's the best energy drink or best coffee is just get in a cold shower. So I will take a warm shower every now and then, or I'll get from the cold plunge into a warm shower. But generally, I'm the weirdo that the chicks are like, you take cold showers? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I like them. Now, the cold plunge is another level, but I cannot stress enough of, one, I just feel better, right? Like you said, something happens. And two, it's doing hard things. You are committing to doing something you don't want to do. Eventually, actually, you'll become addicted to it. But I say addicted, it makes you feel better. But like goofy things like you're talking about, I walk the dogs in the morning. When I say I get out, I get the dog bowls, whatever the temperature is, I'm in my underwear. I'm doing that because it makes me do something that I don't want to do, right? I don't want to go out in -50 weather in my underwear to get the dog bowls and walk the dogs around the house or whatever. I know that probably sounds stupid to people. It's just pushing yourself to do something you don't want to do. So when you actually have to do something you don't want to do, it's much, much easier. And
yeah, man.
So, and I probably explained that poorly, but doing hard things every day.
On.
Well, I do push-ups all day long. And, I've never heard a chick say, I wish your chest was smaller. That's part of it. Or I wish you had smaller arms. So, right. But the thing is I'm doing air squats and push-ups all day just to keep the blood flowing. It's a fitness thing. And is it easier to not do?
I want to hear about that because in May I started doing 100 push-ups a day, non-negotiable. So it doesn't matter what the situation is. There's been times where I hop into bed and I'm like, oh no, and then I have to flop onto the floor and do 100 push-ups. So you're doing them all. Like, help me understand a little bit about what that looks like. So I'm not doing squats all day. I'm not doing push-ups all day. I just have that one thing that I made it in May a non-negotiable, just because. How is it going to hurt me? I guess if my shoulder's blown, I'll probably not do it. But barring that,
so
what does your thing look like? Why are you doing it? What does it look like? How do you focus in on it?
Well, one is just being stuck in an office off and on, whatever it's good to.
So you work generally at a desk?
No, not now. But when I was in an office,
okay.
That was the reason. But the reality of this is part of it was to show people, as well as to myself, the people that say I don't have time to work out. You do, right? And so it was one of those things to where it first started as And I was exactly like you. I did 100 push-ups. I do 4 sets of 25, and I do 4 sets of 25 air squats. Well, then it got to be to a point where if I was getting stagnant, right? If I'm answering emails, if I'm doing, when I'm not on the side of the mountain, was wake up, right? I'm starting to nod off. I'm getting tired. Knock out 25 push-ups. Knock out 25 air squats. So do I do 100 every day? Yeah, definitely do at least 100. The thing is if you're listening to this podcast, try it, right? And when I say try it, you may not be able to do 25 in a row. Do 25 in a day, meaning do however many you can do until you hit muscle failure, basically. So with this is, one, you're doing something you don't want to do, like we just talked about. Second, you're getting more fit. Thirdly, and this is the big one, if you are saying you don't have time to work out, if you set yourself to this task, it will tell you you're lying to yourself. You do have time because you can do push-ups and air squats anywhere, right? So you're going to get fit. You're burning calories. You're proving to yourself you can do something that you don't want to do. And much like going to college, I'm not a big fan of college for a lot of different things, but college is good. But the biggest thing, if I'm hiring somebody that has a 4-year degree, it just showed me that you fucking showed up, right? I really don't care that much about what your degree is. Usually. Now, but what it does show me is you showed up for 4 years and you got something from that. So you have a relative or decent amount of work ethic as a whole, right? That's not across the board. So if you can prove to yourself that you can do this, so set that goal and then set a higher goal and a higher goal, like you're proving to yourself that you can do something you did not want to do. And that opens other doorways. Now I'm going to start walking, right? Now I'm going to walk to the end of the driveway and back. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it over and over. And next thing you know, you're actually somewhat of a fitness person just by starting to do 25 push-ups a day. That's a very
right wing,
long-winded answer, but
you got to be careful with your right-wing ideologies. Fitness is just.
I don't know anyone that ever got fit that said, "Fuck, I wish I didn't get fit." Like, bottom line, I don't know anybody got skinny that said, "Wish I was fat again." Right? That's just.
I don't know anybody that didn't take the vaccine that wishes they would have.
That's a good point. And I got blasted for this vaccine thing. And I don't want to dive into this too much, but my position on this was I'm healthy and I'm fit and I want the natural immunization, right? I don't have a bunch of comorbidities and I don't, right? I got COVID. It sucked for a few days. I kept hunting like an idiot. And, I came home and I was shitty for a week and then off I went. And I had a friend that was a doctor that was really pushing me to get the vaccine. I had another friend that was like, dude, this is going to burn out like any other, like I say, how did he word this? He said, by the 4th or 5th iteration of this, it'll be the equivalent of the sniffles, right? You want yourself to be, you want, I'm losing the word here, but you want to be able to beat this on your own without any vaccine. Above and beyond that, the vaccine itself didn't have the long-term studies it should have had compared to other vaccines. Because I'm not against vaccines. I'm against ones that are whipped together real fast. And I don't want to go into the conspiracy theories with that, but I don't get the flu vaccine. The one time I did, I got the flu really bad. I was like, fuck, why did I even get it? Right.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just not, I just feel that the government, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Why weren't there free gym memberships? Why weren't there free health clinics? Why wasn't the government spending millions of dollars into making a healthier world than they were at ending the economy? And I'm getting irritated about this because it's like, I go to the movie theater and I get yelled at for fat shit. I don't do it publicly, but I'm looking at all these people that are morbidly obese. And sometimes there's more to it than that. But the reality is you're eating 3 donuts in the morning and you're drinking soda all day. Nobody focused on health and fitness. Nobody. They just focused on getting the jab. And it pissed me off because it's like we as a society in the United States don't focus on fitness. Our food is horrible. The shit they put in our food is horrible. It's causing colon. I mean, I'm going to shut up now because I'm getting pissed, but I just wished we worked on health and fitness.
Take that anger. We need that anger. It's one of my biggest. So I developed an electrolyte formula, and magnesium is a cofactor to vitamin D production. Vitamin D, magnesium, very essential to immunity. And I'll tell you, vitamin D is such an important aspect to generative health. So everything that we're looking at, every aspect of our lives can be beneficial or more beneficial by proper supplementation. It doesn't necessarily mean you're taking it in pill form, just what you're getting in your food and your diet and the sunlight that you get on your skin. All of these things, so important. And what's crazy, when you're saying the natural immunity thing, when I was doing that content that I was talking about on TikTok, which TikTok wasn't quite the same as it was when I was doing that content, I did get, suspended off of both of those accounts that grew. However, an interesting thing that I realized during that COVID situation was I went and I didn't post much on Instagram at all. I was like, I'm just going to do all TikTok. I tried to hashtag natural immunity and it wouldn't allow it. It wouldn't post. So then I went and I searched natural immunity on Instagram. This was in late 2020 and through 2021. But in late 2020, I did an extensive blog post and kind of wrote up all the things that I was worried about with this overreaction in May of 2020. And we kind of fast forward a little bit further. I typed in natural immunity into Instagram and it showed no results. It was that censored. And when you understand the corporate capture of our federal government, especially with Big Pharma, and you look at everything that's happening, when we talk about preparedness, it is so vital to understand how captured health, and I use health in quotes, is in the United States right now. It is, it's such a big thing, and I'll talk about it currently on my current content that I'm posting. It not a lot, but I'll bring it up and say, this is important. You should stick to what you know. It's like, guys, if we keep going down this road, the people that we're creating are helpless. They are a burden. So let's say Aaron and I are doing everything we can to be as healthy as we can. You people are going to bring us down with you. That's how it works. That's how governments and societies work. So yeah, it's a big deal, and we should be talking a lot about it, because when it comes to preparedness, health is not just about your personal health. It has so much to do with everyone around us. And when we're consuming the foods that we've got, when we're being vaccinated the way that we are, all of these things, when you see the growth of autoimmune disease, when you see the growth and the proliferation of seed oils, and then you see the proliferation and the growth of sugar consumption, you look at all of these things and you look at the cases of autoimmunity, you look at autism, you look at everything across the board, it has grown. There's no defeating it. You can try to pull out statistics and things that make your case. You'll fail every single time. There has to be reform. And I'll say this one thing on politics, unless you want to get into it further, that's why I love RFK. And I'm so happy that he is involved right now. Very, very happy.
No, believe me. And I've had a few of my kind of left-leaning friends say that he scares the shit out of them. And I'm like, really? I literally could not dance the jig more, right? Like, and when I say that, we just talked about that, and I've got about 10 more minutes before I have to hop on this podcast, but I don't want to get off this subject. When you're looking at the day-to-day life and what people eat and so on and so forth, and again, I'm a recovering fat kid, right? Like, I may be a fitness guy now, but if you, let's say, people poo-poo on the carnivore diet, or whatever, right? Like, let's say you just do a cancellation diet. And when I say that, fast for a few days. This is Aaron Snyder's redneck cancellation. Do it. Fast for, 24 hours. And if you need something, drink bone broth. Kettle Fire is kind of my bone broth of choice. Just drink that all day, and it'll help you shit too. So, which is good. So get some stuff out of your body. And then when you reintegrate, like, just eat, let's say you just eat eggs, or just eat steak or meat of some sort. No processed sugars, no processed carbs, nothing like that. And figure out, I promise you, in the first 3 days, you will be a different person totally, whether that be inflammation in your joints, your gut health, your mental clarity. And then as you're bored because you're starving, read about seed oils, read about this shit, because people are like, man, I really don't know, what I should eat. And I'm like, oh, I can tell you really easy. If it didn't come from the ground, right, or the earth, you probably shouldn't eat the shit. And I say that, I'll eat things that are like, I'll eat almond flour crackers or a protein bar occasionally. But I mean, in general, if you're eating eggs and steak, things of that nature, apples or whatever else, people like, I'm eating healthy. I'm like, what'd you have? Well, and they list it off, and I'm like, yeah, that's not healthy. And I'm going off on a tangent here, but most of any ailment that someone has, at the very least, you will be on the road to recovery by changing your diet. Not everyone, but diabetes, heart failure, anything to do with being overweight at all. I mean, that's all diet. Like, diet will fix inflammation. Your knees hurt, your joints hurt. That's all diet, right? Gut health, right? That's all diet. Like, diet fixes those things. And we shit on it as Americans. Like, we make fun of it. And it drives me crazy.
It's insane.
No, it's
truly insane. Well, there's a little bit of hope, I feel, right now in that aspect. I think there's a lot of problems that can arise. And just if we're kind of finalizing things up, I guess the biggest thing is just it's so multifaceted. We have things to be concerned about that we need to prepare for. AI is so misunderstood, and we're going to see a shift in absolutely every aspect of our lives. We thought, oh, cool, the internet really changed everything, which it absolutely did. AI is going to double, triple, quadruple, 100x that possibly. How life is different as far as how money is earned, how everything happens. The fears of what drones can do in relation to warfare. Then we have concerns about EMP. We have concerns about that's an electromagnetic pulse. We have concerns about nuclear issues that we just brushed on a little bit. We have cyber attacks. We have job loss. We have insecurities. I was in the mortgage industry up until 2008. You know what happened in 2008? I lost everything. Yeah. I went to zero. I filed bankruptcy. I literally lost everything. I ended up buying a $1,000 1992 Saturn. I don't even remember what the model was. And this is after being in the mortgage business, I was making between $20,000 and $30,000 a month, doing fantastic as somebody in their 20s. It was ridiculous. It was great. I lost everything because I thought I was king ding-a-ling. I wasn't, apparently. Lost it all. That is going to happen again to a lot of people. The indicators of what happened in 2008 we're seeing that again right now. Luckily, we have some things to go against that, like Bitcoin, for example. But there are things that are happening. It's not just the president or our shadow government, the corporate-led complexes that have been established. There's so many things that we have to be looking at, and not in a fearful way. I don't fear. None of this is fearful to me. In fact, I will happily accept it. It would be terrible. But again, we go back to that concept of being a stoic. All of these negative things that happen in the world, the only power that we have is over our mind and how we personally are prepared. And if anything is my message, it's that. How to prepare for everything. Get your mind right. Try to become better physically. And then recognize. Don't try to hide away from all of these possibilities. Because, a cyber attack on your bank account where you can't take any of your cash out, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Good luck. So have these things in mind. Have this plan. You don't need to be scared. You don't need to be afraid. There's no need for fear if you're prepared. And I guess captivating, putting all this together into one, that's my message. How to prepare for everything. Recognize that you can only control your mind and your body. That's it.
No, that's a hell of a message. So the last thing I want to cover, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I get asked about good audiobooks. So I'm going to list, I'm hoping you listen or have good reads, but The Borrowed World is a book series I think everybody should listen to, as well as the Mad Mick and Locker 9. They're all kind of one group of series, as well as 1 Second After in that series. Those, real, not real, whatever, they're pretty realistic shit with what Rob and I have been talking about to me. So I suggest those books to everyone. Do you have any books that you would suggest, audiobooks for people to listen to that kind of cover above and beyond what you teach on your page?
Yeah, 1 Second After comes up for everybody. I've read it. I think it's good. If you want to go further, and it's just way better. And the problem is, I think there's like 11 books in the series, and then they spin off. I've just started maybe 3 months ago. The next series, it's basically the same timeline. It's the same events, but it's in a different location, which is pretty cool because they kind of reference. And I used to live in Florida. I left Florida. That was when I was in the mortgage business, but left there quite a while ago. I think probably 2009 I left Florida. But it's all based in Florida. And the first book is called Going Home. The author is American or Angry American. It's the audiobooks are done by Duke Fontaine, and he's fantastic. It's great to listen to in the car, but the first book in that series is Going Home. And once you get hooked on those characters, you just kind of keep going through, but it's the same thing. There's an EMP, it's weaponized, then it kind of goes through the entire process. It's very interesting. So I love it.
Check out the Borrowed World, because it's the same. It's better, I feel, than 1 Second After, and it is another.
That one in Mississippi? Like
Alabama, Mississippi. Yep. And
it starts off with a guy that likes to ride bicycles. Is that
no? So this one,
No.
This one starts out. Oddly enough, they're on a business trip, and it's definitely written by a prepper, and it sets it up to where they're driving back from the business trip, and the world, all the power, by terrorists, fuel, basically all the power, like the major. They take out all the power and fuel to the United States. And the preppers are the weirdos, and the two that are not are the ones saying, no, the government will help us. And it is literally written probably like this one that you just listed, Going Home. It literally shows what humanity will become and how fucking stupid some people are and think that the government will protect them. And again, sometimes the government protects you. I'm not anti-government to a certain degree, but you definitely need to, in my mind, you are alone, right? You need to be prepared for yourself. And it shows the duality of man. Basically, it shows that yin and yang, that Democrat Republican, nope, I'm going to the FEMA camp. And then the prepper's like, fuck the FEMA camp. I'm going home. I'm ready. Like, I'm not going to a FEMA. And it's 13 books, I think, and it's very,
it sounds almost identical.
It's good. It's
Going Home.
It's very good.
That's
and
awesome.
I stress for people to listen to some series like that to at least enlighten or broaden your mind on some of this stuff.
And you can realize very quickly how fast society crumbles without food. It's so any of these books, and that's the core message is food,
and what people will do for food. That's the real eye opener.
Yeah, we're talking like 48 to 72 hours too. I'm not saying like 3 months. We're talking within the week when people are hungry. That's why you never draw a hungry crowd. If you want to disperse activists that are in a situation where it looks like there's a riot about to start in some city, all you got to do is remove the food. Don't let the hot dog cart sit there. You got to get the food out because it doesn't take long for people to get hungry and then to disband. So it works both ways. Yeah. You can use it for a tool, and you can also recognize how fast society crumbles if the supply chain gets knocked down. And we actually saw instances of supply chain issues during COVID. It wasn't a huge impact for me. There were certain things that I couldn't get for my business, but it doesn't take much. And when that's broken down, you're on your own. It would be wild if it were to happen.
Yeah. No, 100%. So, well, cool. Everybody check out those books. Check out, Robbie, mention your page one more time for people to check out.
Yeah, just Robbie Benson, ROBBY BENSON. And you can just check that out on Instagram. That'll lead you to everything else.
Well, dude, I've done probably a couple thousand podcasts at least, and this has been one of my favorite ones. And I'm not bullshitting. I'm happy to have you on, and I'm definitely going to be pestering you to have you on again and maybe teach some courses with me on this subject that we can talk about later. So thank you, dude. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it. Love the time. Love to talk about this. You're great. I also find your content as an inspiration, seeing you get up there in the backcountry. You're up there more often than I am. I live in it. I don't know how close you are to where you're going to get out and playing, but I live in it. I get up there, and to see the long-term effort. I don't think a lot of people that don't do it recognize how difficult mentally, physically it is to go out for a week into the backcountry with a bow. I think it's lost on a lot of people unless you've done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, it's an
that's awesome.
adventure. It'll test your skills for sure. So, yeah, dude, thank you again. I got to hop on a freaking Zoom call, which I hate, but I'm going to. So, everybody,
All right.
check out Robbie's page. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Take it easy, everybody.
Take care.